Welcome to another episode of BOLELENG as Khulume. We are saying as a South African Democratic Teachers Union that as we approach these elections on the 29th of May, we want to talk to all fraternal organizations. Not only do we talk to education workers, but we want to reach out to the society.
I want to be there when the people start to turn it around, when they triumph over poverty. I want to be there when the people win the battle against AIDS. I want to lend a hand. I want to be there for the alcoholic. I want to be there for the drug addict. I want to be there for the victims of violence and abuse. I want to lend a hand. Send me.
I'm ready to save. I'm ready to save.
We are promising you again another exciting episode. We are joined again by the young guns.
Forward to socialism, forward. Down with capitalism, down. Phansi ngezidlwengu, phansi. Phansi ngotsotsi, phansi. Phansi ngoqothoza, phansi. Forward to the Liberation Alliance, forward.
National Secretary of the Young Communist League of South Africa, Cde Mzwandile Thakhudi. Now, I must start, Nopala, as I introduce and greet you as well, that the disclaimer is that I am a very proud YCL product myself. So one can expect that we're going to have indeed quite an invigorating conversation. On Wednesday, on the 27th, you went to the Constitutional Hill with the South African Communist Party of heralding. You went there to deliver a particular memorandum because you've got views about some of the remarks that would have been made. Now, I want to know that what do you think was the impact of the action? You would recall that the Steenhuisen matter is about the crime wardens. These are young people. These are people who had no hope, who were unemployed. Now, the YCL was there today joining the South African Communist Party. What was the significance of this particular action? As I greet you, Nopal.
No, thank you so much, Comrade Thakhudi, and then for having us. As you would have introduced me, my name is Mzwandile Thakhudi, YCL National Secretary. We are glad to partake in this conversation today on SADTU'S. And then on the introductory issue you are raising around our participation on Wednesday on the picket at the Constitutional Hill arranged by the South African Communist Party, culminating from a case that has been opened of criminal injury open against Mr. Steenhuisen, who has shown sentiments that are demeaning, sentiments that are dehumanizing, and also racist statements towards the criminal warders, crime warders, as you have appropriately said, that those warders in their majority are youth and black. So we take a dim view of these sentiments that are divisive, that are against the program. That is a reversal actually of our program for social building, nation building, social cohesion. They are destructive for the program of rehabilitating the people of our sad and dark apartheid past, because he comes across as a racist that is a beneficiary of white supremacy.
And of course, the Young Communist League of South Africa would have then felt that it is important to also make its voice heard in this particular context. Now, let's start the conversation, or let's continue in this way. The report from the Independent Electoral Commission indicates that the voters' roll is standing at around 27 million. Now, let me give you the numbers. The numbers make for an interesting reading. Historically, young people have somehow been very reluctant or not as optimistic in participating in democratic processes. We have seen a slight increase, well, a modest increase, one would probably say. But out of the voters between the ages of 18 and 19 years, we've got about 250,000 females, 326,000 males. You then move on to the next category, 20 to 29. You've got about 2 million males, you've got about 2.5 million females. And then the last one, 30 to 39, you've got about 3.1 million males, you've got about 3.7 million females. Now, this is out of a voters' roll of just above 27 million. Historically, we have always seen this pessimism, especially as it comes from young people in terms of participating in democratic processes. Now, what are the views of Ufasimba? Why is it that it always seems as if we need to drag young people to participate in democratic processes that, by the way, others lost their right to life for?
Thanks for that particular background in the question. And I will concur with you to say that if you look at, for instance, the figures around 2019, for instance, we have had, for instance, a third of those who were eligible to vote being registered. That is the youth. And then you had a third of those who are registered who actually go out and vote. This now corroborates a point you are making about there has not been enthusiasm around voting, especially among young people. But now, with those figures in totality, they ultimately suggest that young people below the youth within the voting who are registered make up 42% now. And which is an important dynamic. In the last voter open registration, we had 77.7% of the youth who actually interfaced with the voting station or the portal. So, but in totality, young people will be constituting 42%, which is a significant increase.
Yes.
And then women will be over, as you have said, the figures are showing that also women are in their majority. And then to come to the gist of the question, because what we have been raising as a Young Communist League, we have been making a call of participatory democracy to be understood broadly in terms of what it means. That voting is right, and we've got to also, because we understand democracy to be by the people and for the people. So as such, we also would understand participatory democracy as also young people forming part of the planning meetings. For instance, if you take the public hearings on a number of bills, there's been BELA bill recently, and there's now SABC bill also on this and the following issue. The local government legislation gives or provides that, rather dictate that there's got to be public participation for budget processes in terms of presentations and those things. So ours is to say participatory democracy has got to be understood broadly as voting, but also contributing to adding value as to what has to be the program of transformation or development which we seek to have, but also eventually to hold accountable the elected public representatives. So the issue is about a majority of young people do feel that our economy, mainstream economy, is exclusionary, in that majority of them are living in bondages of poverty. They are destitute, unemployed, underemployed, and underdeveloped. So as such, they may not necessarily view the system as assisting them and see the exercise of voting as being retarded, of which the narrative is now changing, that the youth are beginning to say we want to take charge at the future into our own hands and ensure that we elect public representatives who are driving an agenda or a cause that seeks to mainstream the questions related and relevant to youth development, which is we believe as a Young Communist League that it is an integral part of human development. Youth development is an integral part of human development. You develop the youth, you develop humanity.
Now tell me about some of the policy interventions. When I talk about policy interventions, I am talking about policy interventions coming from the ANC-led government in particular. We had our democratic dispensation in 1994. It is now 30 years of democracy. This is 2024. Now, the question is, given some of the objective factors that affect young people socio-economically, because they are there, no balance. Let us be honest. By the way, and one is not necessarily carrying a particular brief here on behalf of anyone, but the fact of the matter is that young people as a demographic, they are indeed under a lot of pressure, not only in a South African context, but there's a number of objective elements as well that could have brought those up. We will be talking very soon also about international solidarity, the stance of the YCL, etc. But now, looking at those objective factors and looking at the efforts that the ANC would have made to push those back, we talk about interventions such as NSFAS. I mean, it's one of the greatest success stories. When yes, there might be challenges. When we look in the basic education sector, we are talking about now feeding schemes, transportation, and other interventions. So we see them. But then what are some of those policy interventions that Ufasimba would like to highlight to sort of show the journey that we have been graphically so over the past 30 years as a democracy led by the ANC government?
That is a given, and our movement, the African National Congress, has a track record of service of our people for the past 30 years. And as we point out the challenges that are there, we do not in any way seek to underplay the what has been achieved by the government of the African National Congress-led alliance. We don't in any way wish to underplay that. But I can also to agree with you, National Schools Nutrition Program is one of the key interventions by our government, especially in the education sector, to ensure that we are able to fight against malnutrition of kids, to ensure that they are ready for the day, to ensure that they are able to optimally succeed and academically. National Financial Aid Scheme, I'm sure we are over 1.2 million now, sitting over 1.2 million. There is now a comprehensive scheme to fund those who were called missing middle. Though we still have issues in terms of how the time which is been given for repayment, and also we said that the scheme, the comprehensive funding model has got to be interest free. That is an issue which we have raised. We can take now, the president has to accent on the national health insurance bill that has been passed by both houses. That is the National Council of Provinces as well as the National Assembly, which is one of the policy interventions. Why? Because as we look into the Human Development Index, we also look at the factors such as the health, because a healthy nation is a productive nation. So an unhealthy nation will obviously not be. So if we are providing a single system of health that is able to ensure quality health services for all, despite of your class position. We look at a number of issues around the sectoral work that government has done, presidential employment stimulus, which saw, for instance, in classroom, the workload, especially administrative workload, being moving from teachers, and then creating employment of what is now called assistant educators. That is creating a massive employment. The support to small enterprises, SMMEs, and a number of interventions which the government has done and continues to do. The matters around the on youth set-asides arising from the Youth Employment Accord, that such as that 30% of public procurement has got to be channeled towards ensuring that young people are able to be mainstreamed in some of those things. So there are really a mirage of policy interventions which have sought to really transform the society, especially to address the historical imbalances. So that is for that reason which we are saying, as the Young Communist League of South Africa, we will be supporting the African National Congress in these upcoming elections to ensure that we protect the gains that have been made, and to ensure that much more happens together with the people.
In fact, since you are talking about defending the gains that have been made under the ANC-led alliance government, and one cannot by any means even ignore those. Now, there is an interesting case that has been happening currently, an interesting court case, and others are arguing and are saying that it is about protecting the legacy of our Umkhonto weSizwe, for instance. The Young Communist League is by far one of the oldest youth political movements that we have in the country. And the Young Communist League often has got very, very sharp views around this. Now, what would be your attitude against that? How do we react as a movement holistically to those who are going out of their way to actually pickpocket? I call it pickpocketing. It's pickpocketing legacy, literally. How do we react around that? How do we get to remind young people that actually this is the history of Umkhonto weSizwe? You would know that the SACP played a very, very critical and integral part when we were going for that particular move as a movement. How do we ensure that young people understand the history of this country, in particular against these pickpocketers of legacies that I'm talking about?
It's not the first time we are seeing this thing. Karl Marx said history always repeats itself. The first issue which I must appreciate, yes, the Young Communist League is the oldest youth organization in this continent. Number two, our late National Secretary, Comrade Ruth First, was also an Umkhonto weSizwe operative, because she ultimately died with a parcel bomb in Maputo, Mozambique. She was in the agitprop unit of our movement as a journalist and a theoretician, a revolutionary and an activist in her own right. Was a wife of Comrade Joslo, who was one of the first commanders of Umkhonto weSizwe. Umkhonto weSizwe, yes, is a joint liberation armed force of the South African Communist Party and the African National Congress. That is an important point to make. It's important to make that point because the South African Communist Party was banned in 1950 through a suppression of Communism Act, which in effect so to suggest that the communist literature should not be distributed, communists should not meet up and share ideas, communists should not address public meetings. So, as such, in 1960, the banning of all political parties, the South African Communist Party already had a decade of underground operation. If you check, Jack Hodgson was a World War veteran who was a communist. Comrade Joe Slovo himself from Lithuania, a veteran of, and then if you look at, for instance, Lily's farm where they were arrested, it was owned by a communist, obviously arising from 1913 Land Act. At that time, there was no way that a native would own a farm such as the one in Lily's farm. So this is just to justify that the communists were integral in the formation of or the founding of Umkhonto weSizwe, which in its preamble declared that the time comes in the life of each and every nation whereby you are only left with two choices, that is to submit or fight, which Umkhonto had chosen the latter, to fight with full might in defense of our people as well as our future. So it then is coming to the issue of the legacy and heritage. It is legacy and it is heritage that is being expropriated and pickpocketed, yes, by opportunists who are self-serving, who are self-centered, who cannot accept the leadership of others, people who are selfish, people who are sellouts, and it now shows us that the level of infiltration which our movement has been vulnerable to over sometimes, because if you can get an askari who can now come up through the structures and so on up until the office of the president, then it shows the level of infiltration which our movement has experienced over time. And it therefore calls and justifies a call forward the necessity for renewal, that in our movement, that we've got to renew ourselves, relook into ourselves in order to ensure that ultimately that in accordance with the very declaration that we take, that we are able to make our movement the most powerful weapon of liberation in the hands of the people. That we joining without motives of material beneficiation. That we will bring our skills in ensuring that. So now we are realizing some who have been camouflaging as activists and revolutionaries now are exposed because they are not at the hem and high echelons of power. Because as the party in the YCLSA have said, neither are we for the parasitic bourgeois network, which most of these people whom are now going towards or gravitating towards MK have been what has been characterized quite correctly in the movement as the parasitic bourgeois network that is eating the movement from within, who are now feeling the heat of renewal and cannot now survive within existing conditions of a corrupt-free organization that is cleansing its public stature by way of service to our people instead of now looting public purse. But neither are we for also resuscitating neoliberal trajectory that is finding expression through the imposition of the austerity measures that we see through budget cuts and sales of public assets, servicing of the international debt and what have you. So we are consistent on that position. Neither are we for the parasitic bourgeois network that is a criminal network, nor for the neoliberal austerity trajectory.
Now, you correctly put it that the Young Communist League of South Africa is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, youth political movement on the continent. And the views of the YCLSA have always been consistent, especially in particular with the international question as well. Now, we have seen recently, you would appreciate what is happening at the level of the ICJ. You would appreciate the interventions that the South African government has come up with at the level of the Palestinian question, and of course amongst other developing dynamics within even the region itself. If I am not mistaken, I think Senegal is just about to pronounce right now the president-elect is already there. But then at the same time, we are seeing what is happening in Gaza, despite a ceasefire being declared, but we are told it's still not binding. But now, what are some of the international global balance of forces that the Young Communist League would want to bring to the fore? Are we on the right trajectory in our approach as an ANC-led government in the international space, the global space?
I think you would recall that priority number 6 on the manifesto is about building better Africa in the world. And that is our expression or our commitment to international solidarity, international relations, international cooperation, to ensure that there is people-to-people relations, party-to-party relations, and as well as obviously economic relations that may come out as a spin-off of those people-to-people, party-to-party, and government-to-government relations. That is number 2. Now, the Young Communist League is an internationalist organization and believes in the humane globe, and we do believe that Lenin was correct to say that is imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. And it is against that ideological grounding that we are for international relations and solidarity. And then we also note the matters and have expressed our opinion and support for South African government, both the international relations, DCO department, as well as the Justice and Correctional Services efforts and endeavors to ensure that it approaches the ICJ on the matter of the Zionist Israel apartheid, a genocidal operation in Palestine, seeking to extinct the Palestinian people, especially in the Gaza. And we are consistent on our view, or we support the Palestinian people. As you would know, we have had historical relations party to party with the PLO and other progressive forces, and we are supportive of all other groups who are leading resistance, including Hamas, in that because there are no liberators. The liberators don't exist. The people will liberate themselves. We are supportive of the resistance that is there because despite of the ceasefire, the judgment of the ICJ, the Israel continues to butcher and clobber people severely, and of concern is the fact that professionals such as journalists, to date over 95 journalists have been murdered. Educators, the bombardments target health institutions such as hospitals, clinics, and then you find majority of those casualties or victims are women and children, the vulnerable groups of our communities. It is for that reason we say the West, including Israel, sucks. They have been saying they are observing rules of international law, but they fail to comply with a body competent to deal with matters relevant to the genocidal campaign which they are discharging on the Palestinian people. And the other issue, there is a strong opposition to the current space of multilateral relations, because the West and the European forces are used to a unipolar wherein they determine everything. That erodes the principle of national sovereignty, self-determination as nations meeting up as equals and sharing experiences. But they want to rubber stamp a phenomenon of a big brother type of issue. I don't know if you have our South African position on the Russia-Ukraine, the position on the issue relevant to China-Taiwan, in supporting of one China, and South African position on a number of issues, Syria, now deployment of 2,000 soldiers in the eastern part of the DRC to ensure that we ultimately ensure that we are able to achieve Vision 2063, that of peacefully resolving conflicts and ultimately silencing the guns. So those positions are a problem, because now the West and their lackeys want to choose friends for us. So thereby taking our national sovereignty I'm certain you are aware that the U.S. Congress is revising or reviewing the relations. I think they resolved the matter of 36-17 on the votes to say they will be revising our relations as though South Africa is some state funding terrorism of some sort. So, but we are saying we will not negotiate and we shouldn't negotiate our independence. And if you want to relate with us, we've got to relate on the basis of mutual respect and understanding and mutual beneficiation as the intended outcome. So we will not have, we shouldn't be bullied, and we want to commend both Mama Naledi and Comrade Lamola on these endeavors which they have taken it. But we are saying over and above that the people united cannot be defeated. And then as such, we are saying we need to continue with the solidarity program. When we have observed some here in Western Cape who have openly aligned themselves with the murderers, because we want to say the issue of Gaza is not about the issue of Muslims, it's about the issue of humanity.
Yes.
And if
absolutely.
And then if the DA here in South Africa is able to openly support murderers, it means we might see yet again maybe another Bipatong where in people to people violence is funded by government. So we should not elect such an organization, because what may happen to the people of Palestine today may be what would be happen to us when the day is maybe given a chance. And we want to say the people must distance themselves from an organization of murderers, because if you support the murderers, you are also complicit.
You are complicit, isn't it? You're absolutely complicit. One of the success stories, we believe as a union, one of the success stories of the ANC-led alliance has indeed been in that particular further education training and the higher education space. One of the challenges, however, that we've always had, I did come up with a disclaimer and say that I'm also I'm a protege of the YCLSA myself. And one of those issues that we have always driven, in fact, as a proactive campaign at that time when I was still in the YCL, I'm sure we still are doing it right now, was how we change the ratio between those young people that are enrolled in TVET colleges vis-a-vis those are enrolled in universities. Now, the police interventions are there. Let us be honest. The ANC government has come actually a long way. If you look at the budget that we had, that was allocated in 1996, not even, just in 1996, vis-a-vis what we have right now, what has been allocated for an intervention like NSFAS. Of course, we still have got the issue of the missing middle. We are seeing papers from yellow to white. They are coming up to come up with suggestions. How would the YCLSA suggest that we start changing this narrative? One of the problems that we have is that we've got a challenge of skills mismatch. I can tell you now that there is quite a non-negligible number of young people who could have recently graduated, but the economy is not necessarily doing enough to absorb them. So is this either related to what we call the investment strike by the private sector? Could that be the reason? Is there any other issue? In any case, how do we then get to change that ratio? In South Africa, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've got either it's 1:5 or 1:3, which means for every one college a TVET student, you would have about between 3 and 5 of those who are in universities. But then we know that the police interventions are there. How do we get to change that ratio such that it can be responsive to the needs of the economy and, in essence, can start absorbing those who are unemployed or misskilled?
Number one, the apartheid government, National Party government, which negated itself into becoming DA in this democratic dispensation. In 1953, introduced something called Bantu education through enacting an act of law, which established 2 departments: the department for the natives of education and the department for the white people. What they did was to allocate 9 times more on the development of a white child in terms of funding, where they will give over 1,000 rand per child at the time, and then 150 or couple for a black child. And then the progressive government of the African National Congress in the past 30 years sought to address those imbalances by introducing a number of interventions, whether through curriculum development, through funding, building of new schools, infrastructure, libraries, and everything that translate into us seeing that top hundreds now. We find quintile 4 even schools.
Absolutely.
With those learners being part of those top achievers. And then in the past, it's reality. It's reality that I think in the last financial year, NSFAS was using something close to 50 billion, 48 billion to be much more precise, or just on NSFAS. And then currently, I think the beneficiaries are sitting at 1.2 million. And there is that divide in the sector of the TVET and traditional or technical universities, which we want to commend the department under the leadership of Dr. Cde Mzwandile, who have rolled out a campaign to ensure that the TVET colleges are institutions of choice. They are institutions of choice. They are not sub-institutions, especially addressing matters related to articulation on the qualifications in terms of the regulating bodies. And I would concur with you that we are seeing a mismatch of skills, because if you look at South African unemployment phenomenon, what comes out is that what is more prevalent as a type of unemployment is a structural unemployment informed by skills mismatches, as you say, but also lack of skills. Because you see, if you look at, for instance, the quarterly labor survey will show you that most people who are unemployed are people who without skills, while we are also observing graduate unemployment sitting at something like 10%, due to like a mismatch, which you say. And we want to also agree that there is an investment strike. There is an investment strike. What shows us that there is an investment strike is, one, capital flight by some of the multinational conglomerates who come here and work here and then take either our mineral resources or profits outside of the country. Sasol at some point invested over 230 some odd millions outside the Republic when they could be investing those resources, because if you take out the resources outside the Republic, you are taking the resources with the employment opportunities that those resources come with. So there is an investment strike. One other element which will show you that there is an investment strike, that families, wealthy families are now coming across now because of these elections are coming across as a philanthropist.
They are
now in
the
a
party would exist for 1 month and already has got funders.
You understand exactly the point we're making, to say why do they invest their resources, or where are these resources now coming from when they can't invest resources in creating industries like for instance priority number 2 talks about industrialization to build an inclusive economy that should be able to, because we've seen that wealth doesn't trickle down, because we have seen growth that has not been creating employment, to the effect that SADTU and COSATU ultimately characterized as jobless growth.
Jobless growth.
So it is for that reason we are supportive of this now. Priority 2 and 1 on creating of employment, ensuring that business and the government are lobbied to create employment. And such that with this industrialization, we should be able to create even much more sustainable jobs. So it is that point we're making. In fact, speaking of which, even the DA was inviting one letter leaked here, where the DA was inviting the handlers under the guise of coming to observe, when they actually know there's some sinister agenda of regime change. This is because now capital is not finding itself much more profitable under the current setting of leaders, where the ANC is renewing itself and the party has been calling sternly for reconfiguration of the alliance. So that is game changing, and then capital will not be happy. So we're not surprised with their involvement, underhand involvement for that matter. But we know that the people united can never be defeated. South Africa is not for sale. Nobody will buy this country. And then that is we're coming with a landslide victory come the 29th of May.
Well, I mean, you correct in saying and in some of the suggestions, Nopala, South Africa is indeed not for sale. I mean, the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa is often used as an example of one of the best in the world in terms of running elections, and it cannot be that suddenly we need additional forces to come and so-called observe. Now, my last question to you, Nopal, as we wrap up. In his last State of the Nation address, the president spoke of a character, Tinswalo, but in essence, it was all about speaking to the relevance of the interventions of the ANC. The 29th of May is coming. We have seen the numbers, we have seen the voters' roll. Now, let me not say more often than not, it sometimes happens that those that are in the voters' roll, on the day of the elections, will probably go, some of them will go crying. Some of them are young people. They will relax and see it as a holiday of sorts. Now, 2 questions for you as we wrap up. What is the message of the Young Communist League of South Africa to all those young people and their hard-fought right to vote, which they must protect? Like I said earlier, others lost their lives for this particular right. On that day, on the 29th of May, what is the message of the YCL about them going to those polling stations and going to cast their votes? But number 2 question linked to that, not only is it about the right to vote, but you also have got a responsibility to vote correctly. That is why as SADTU we are not apologetic. We are very clear about our intention to fully be behind the ANC-led alliance for a landslide victory. What I am saying in short, Nopala, is why should a young person right now stand up, wake up on the 29th of May, go and vote, but not only vote for the ANC?
Voting is cool. Our message is to say, voting is cool. Let us take responsibility. Let us defend our country. And let us take charge, for the future is in our hands. Whether we like it or not, Chairman Mao says, the world is ours, but also the world is yours. It is especially yours as the youth, because we are full of vitality and vigor. So it means in terms of life expectancy, we are confirmed for if all else remains equal, we are confirmed for a much lengthier life. So it is for that reason I do believe that as young people, we've got to see voting as cool, in that we have got to protect our gains that have been made, but also to determine our destiny, because it doesn't end only with voting. Like I said earlier, also we must hold accountable the public representatives we elect. We are not anyway offering them a blank check. We are voting for them because there's a clear 6 priority manifesto that suggests that our movement, the African National Congress, will come up with interventions and policies that to create employment, industrialize, invest in people, create a better Africa and the world, tackle cost of living. So why wouldn't we want to vote for such a manifesto that accommodates our plight, our everyday plight? So it is that call which the Young Communist League is making. Let us go all out and ensure that we vote the African National Congress that has been able to come out boldly and say, we know the challenges, however, equally we have achieved this much. We have a track record of governance. We have seen that coalitions don't work in all the key metros. The only metros that the African National Congress is controlling is Mangaung and Buffalo City, and elsewhere is DA, EFF and others. Moonshot, PACT, that is led by the DA, is an old narrative of wanting to take the ANC below 50%. Now they have co-opted even a capital on the polls. You see the polls that are circulating a particular narrative that is now propaganda, because we don't realize where their polling is based. They just go to Santin Square, meet up their friends and say, you don't like the ANC, you don't like the ANC, therefore the ANC is losing, and put up a message across that says the ANC is losing, and which is fallacy. So we're just saying, young people, come, let us put it in their face that South Africa is not for sale.
I like that. Voting is cool, but it's even cooler when you vote for the correct party,
which is the African National Congress. In this case,
it's African National Congress.
Yes.
Voting is cool.
Yes.
Well, that was another episode of BOLELENG. Asikhulume, let's talk, asixoxisane. We will see you again in our next episode. And remember those last words. Here is my takeaway. Voting is cool, and it is even cooler when you vote for the African National Congress. That has been another episode of BOLELENG. My name is Cde Mzwandile Thakhudi. Thank you.